Welcome back after the break. You're watching Indus News, and I'm Fiza Jamal bringing you our main stories in detail. We start from the U.S., whose President Donald Trump has reiterated his offer to mediate what he called an explosive situation in Kashmir. Talking to reporters in the Oval Office, Trump said the complicated Kashmir situation has a lot to do with religion. Trump said he will raise the matter with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G7 summit in France over the weekend.
I think we're helping the situation, but there's tremendous problems between those two countries, as you know, and I will do the best I can to mediate or do something. Great relationship with both of them, but they are not exactly friends at this moment. Complicated situation. A lot has to do with religion. Religion's a complicated subject.
Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department has called on India to release thousands of detained Kashmiris and restore their basic rights. Moving on, Indian occupation forces have martyred 2 more civilians in Kashmir during a search operation in Baramulla district. This comes after the occupation forces arrested 30 more people during clashes in Srinagar. More than 4,000 Kashmiris have been detained in the last 17 days, and a strict curfew is still in place. Meanwhile, pro-freedom Kashmiri leaders have called for a mass march on Friday against India's illegal revocation of Kashmir's special status. They said the rally will move towards the office of the UN Military Observer Group in Srinagar. In a related story, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Qureshi has apprised his Danish and Norwegian counterparts of the current situation in occupied Kashmir. In telephone conversations, Qureshi briefed Danish Foreign Minister Jeppe Kofod over India's illegal move of revoking Article 370. The Danish Foreign Minister said his country fully supports the UN stance on Kashmir issue. Talking to Norwegian Foreign Minister Ine Marie Eriksen Søreide, Qureshi discussed gross human rights violation by India in the valley. Søreide said dialogue is the only solution to resolve this dispute. India's former Finance and Union Minister P. Chidambaram is missing after Delhi High Court rejected his pre-arrest bail plea in a corruption case. Chidambaram is accused of $40 million worth of money laundering during his tenure in 2007. Earlier, Central Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement Directorate officials raided his residence. The Congress leader's lawyers then moved the top court, which sent the application to Indian Chief Justice Ranjan Gogoi for final call. The 9th round of Afghan peace talks between the U.S. and the Taliban are set to resume in Doha over the weekend. U.S. Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad said he will try to finalize an agreement on the remaining issues. Khalilzad said he has briefed the Trump administration on his negotiations with the Taliban and discussed the next steps. After meeting with Taliban in Qatar, Khalilzad will travel to Kabul to consult with the Afghan government. The U.S. has said it will prevent a recently released Iranian oil tanker from delivering its cargo to Syria. The tanker Grace 1 was released by Gibraltar on Sunday after being detained for 5 weeks. U.S. State Secretary Mike Pompeo said Washington will act if the tanker heads to Syria.
The United States has a set of sanctions that preclude crude oil from being shipped to any country. We've made clear anyone who touches it, anyone who supports it, anyone who allows a ship to dock is at risk of receiving sanctions from the United States of America. So if that ship, again, heads to Syria, we'll take every action we can consistent with those sanctions.
Meanwhile, the U.S. has urged the UN to extend an arms embargo on Tehran that is due to expire next year as part of the Iran nuclear deal. And now Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says international waterways will not be as secure as before if Tehran's oil exports are cut to zero because of U.S. sanctions. At a meeting with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Tehran, Rouhani said unilateral pressure against Iran won't guarantee security in the region or the world. Earlier, the U.S. said it will prevent a recently released Iranian oil tanker from delivering its cargo to Syria. The tanker Grace 1 was released by Gibraltar on Sunday after being detained for 5 weeks. In Sudan, an 11-member sovereign council has taken oath and is set to rule the country for a 3-year transition period. The outgoing head of the military council, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is the leader of the newly formed government. The new governing body replaces the ruling Transitional Military Council that took charge after months of deadly protests brought down longtime ruler Omar al-Bashir in April. A power-sharing agreement was signed between the military and civilian protest movement leaders last week, paving the way for the transitional government. With the swearing in of the new council, it's the first time Sudan is not under full military rule since Bashir's coup d'etat in 1989. Yemen's Houthi rebels claim they have shot down a U.S. drone in southeast of capital Sana'a. The group's Al Masira TV said the MQ-9 drone was brought down in a Houthi-controlled part of the Tamar Governorate. In a statement, the U.S. military's Central Command said it was aware of the reports but declined to give further information. Meanwhile, UN Special Envoy Martin Griffiths has warned Yemen is in danger of fragmenting.
The fragmentation of Yemen is becoming a stronger and more pressing threat. And this, of course, makes our efforts in the Yemeni peace process more urgent than ever. And there is no time to lose. The stakes are becoming too high for the future of Yemen, the Yemeni people, and indeed the wider region.
His statement comes after separatists seized the port city of Aden and 2 government military bases near the adjacent provincial capital of Zinjibar. Moving on to China, which has announced it will impose sanctions on American firms selling arms to Taiwan. Addressing a press briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesman Gang Shuang said the sales undermines China's sovereignty and security interests. The U.S. State Department has formally approved a major $8 billion F-16 fighter jet deal with Taiwan. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency said the deal includes 66 aircraft and 75 General Electric Co. engines. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen said the sale will help the country build a new air force and boost its air defense capacity. Meanwhile, the foreign ministers of China, Japan, and South Korea have held trilateral cooperation talks in Beijing in the first such meeting since 2016. The meeting was held amid an escalating trade row between Seoul and Tokyo. During the meeting, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the 3 countries should address their issues constructively through dialogue. Japan's Foreign Minister Taro Kono said bilateral differences must not impede trilateral cooperation. South Korea's Kang Kyung-hwa said the trilateral dialogue should contribute to peace on the Korean Peninsula and strengthen free trade. In a bilateral meeting, Tokyo and Seoul foreign ministers agreed to resolve trade and wartime workers' compensation issues through dialogue. Italian President Sergio Metiria has started 2-day talks with parties to seek a way out of political crisis. Metiria will now decide if he wants to call early elections or try to put together a new coalition. Earlier, Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte announced his resignation after weeks of political turmoil. It came after the ruling coalition's League Party planned a no-confidence motion against the government. Conte accused Interior Minister Matteo Salvini of sinking the coalition for personal and political gains. And now I'll take a very short break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back after the break. You're watching Indus News and I'm Fiza Jamal, continuing with our main stories. Nearly 100 migrants stranded on the rescue ship off the coast of Lampedusa have disembarked on the Italian island. This comes after Italian prosecutors ordered the seizure of the open arms and evacuation of migrants. Officials said the decision was made due to the difficult situation on board. It came shortly after Spain said it is sending a naval vessel to escort the ship to Mallorca. Italy had refused to allow the ship from docking, though some minors and sick had been taken ashore. Earlier, about 10 migrants jumped off the ship, hoping to swim to the island. The Open Arms welcomed the decision, which ended a 19-day standoff between the Spanish charity and the government in Rome. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has asked the European Union to scrap the Irish border backstop provision of the Brexit government. Responding to Johnson, European Council President Donald Tusk says he has given no realistic alternatives to the Irish backstop. Details in this report.
In a letter to the European Council President Donald Tusk, the British Prime Minister called the backstop plan undemocratic. Tusk has accused Prime Minister Johnson of pushing towards border checks in Ireland after Brexit. He says those against the backstop in fact support re-establishing a border.
We also note that the letter does not provide a legal operational solution to prevent the return of a hard border on the island of Ireland. It does not set out what any alternative arrangements could be, and in fact it recognises that there is no guarantee that such arrangements will be in place by the end of the transitional period.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel says the EU will think about the practical solution of post-Brexit border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Merkel said renegotiating the withdrawal agreement will not be required.
Boris Johnson referred to the backstop issue, but that isn't new. The British Parliament has also addressed it. The moment we have a practical arrangement on how to preserve the Good Friday Agreement and at the same time define the borders of the internal market, we would not need the backstop anymore.
Earlier, Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar said the backstop provision cannot be changed.
Former Vatican Treasurer Cardinal George Pell has lost a legal appeal against his sex abuse convictions in Australia. Pell, the highest-ranking Catholic to be convicted of child sex offences, will remain in prison for at least another 3 years. Pell was sentenced in March to 6 years in jail after being found guilty on 5 charges of abusing 2 boys. Pell appealed his conviction to Victoria's Court of Appeal on 3 grounds. He argued the jury's verdict was unreasonable. His appeal was dismissed by a panel of 3 judges in Victoria's Court of Appeal.
By a majority of 2 to 1, the Court of Appeal has dismissed Cardinal Pell, George Pell's appeal against his conviction for the commission of sexual offences. He will continue to serve his sentence of 6 years imprisonment.
The 78-year-old Australian prelate will now consider a final appeal in the nation's highest court. Moving on, US President Donald Trump has cancelled his visit to Denmark after it rejected his proposed purchase of Greenland. Trump was scheduled to hold talks with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen in early September. In a tweet, Trump said his trip was on hold because Frederiksen was not interested in selling Greenland to the US. The Danish Prime Minister has called the idea absurd. The deportation of families from the United States to Guatemala has increased by 50% compared to last year. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says it has removed nearly 49,000 Guatemalans so far. This report has the details.
Guatemala and the United States have implemented a new process to deport migrants. They are deported without any claims to support their remaining life in the U.S. Nearly 200,000 people traveling in families from El Salvador and Honduras have been apprehended at the U.S. border since October. Most of these people were passing through Guatemala and Mexico along the way.
We're 3/4 of the way through the year. We're currently currently now we've removed 49,000 Guatemalan nationals throughout this fiscal year. Last year, we removed approximately 50,000, so we're going to suppress that number.
More than 1,500 members of family units this year. Timothy S. Robbins, Acting Executive Associate Director for the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, said the number has increased 5-fold.
What we are doing is working very closely with the government of Guatemala to make sure that we limit the time in custody for family units. And what we're trying to do is truly protect those children that are on that perilous trek from Guatemala to the United States.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement sends about 9 flights per week to Guatemala to deport migrants.
A displaced Syrian teacher gives classes at an internally displaced persons camp in Idlib. Conditions at school after arriving in Atme, a camp for IDPs, were never ideal for the students. This report will tell you why. An outdoor school under the olive trees was set up by Muhammad, a teacher who was seeking refuge in a camp. The idea was to teach children who have limited access to education due to war. The flare-up in attacks has taken away even the option of a makeshift school in mosque and other buildings.
We fled to the region of Atme around 4 months ago, and we came here under the olive trees. I saw the suffering of the children, so I tried to take a charitable decision to make a school under the olive trees. The idea was welcomed so that the children can continue the studies as they were doing at school before they fled.
As children learn to read and write under the olive trees in an outdoor setting, it gives them hope. The residents of the camp look forward to a truce in the region so they could resume to normal life. Meanwhile, the basic education is being imparted to children at the camp.
My dream is that there is a school here with enough seats, tents, stationery for the students, so the young generation can continue with their studies and our revolution will continue with them.
According to UNICEF, more than 2.5 million Syrian children have fled the country since fighting began. Some groups put the number of children killed at over 20,000. An exhibition of art inspired by iconic pop star Michael Jackson has opened in Finland's capital city of Helsinki. This report has the details.
The display titled Michael Jackson on the Wall brings together old and new works depicting the singer and his impact on popular culture. Works by American artist Andy Warhol and British potter Grayson Perry have been featured. The show of 90 works first hung in London's National Portrait Gallery in 2018 to widespread critical acclaim. It then toured Paris and Bonn before coming to Helsinki.
This exhibition and these artists are not celebrating Michael Jackson, but kind of analyzing his meaning in our culture through their works. So sometimes I feel when I look at their works that they are talking more about us and our society than Michael Jackson.
Many of the Jackson-inspired works veer between the gaudy and the grotesque. This includes an oversized golden statue of the megastar with his pet chimpanzee, Bubbles, by Paul McCartney.
In the world of business, European stock markets, which have rebounded from yesterday's losses, boosted by reports of merger talks between car makers Fiat, Renault and Chrysler. But Asian bourses have closed mixed as investors await indications of economic stimulus from the U.S. Federal Reserve later this week. The CAC in Paris gained more than 1% in early trading, driven by rising automotive shares. The FTSE 100 and DAX indices also went up more than 0.5%. London, Paris and Frankfurt were also fueled by oil majors whose share prices rose on a higher than expected fall in U.S. inventories. Earlier, Asia's major indices were either flat or in negative territory as Wall Street fears of a U.S. recession crossed the Pacific. China claims it produced nearly 150,000 sets of robots in 2018, which are over 38% of the world's total. This was announced by the Ministry of Industry and IT at the 2019 World Robot Conference in Beijing. On China's robot market, this report has the details.
The Chinese Institute of Electronics released a report on the development of China's robot industry at the event. It shows the global robot market will hit $29.4 billion in 2019, and the local market will reach $8.68 billion. The report said the annual growth rate of China's robot market stands at 20.9% from 2014 to 2019. The Minister of Industry and Information Technology, Miao Wei, said robots promote high-quality development despite the challenges.
The development of the robotics industry faces many problems and challenges. Core technologies need to be further improved. Scenarios and areas of their application need to be broadened. Laws and regulations to prevent and control their risks need to be perfected.
This year's conference attracted 180 research institutions and robotics companies from around the world.
We'll start with football. Atletico Mineiro have won the first leg fixture of the Copa Sudamericana quarterfinal in Brazil. They defeated LA Equidad by 2-1. Equidad's midfielder David Camacho opened the scoring line with a 7th minute penalty kick, but it was shortly equalized by a volley from Mineiro's Jair Rodriguez. Elias Trindade led Mineiro to victory by scoring the winner in 80th minute of the match. Both sides will meet each other again for the second leg fixture on August the 28th. Well, it is quite hot today in Lahore, but let's see what the weather is looking like today around the globe. These are all the main stories in detail I have for you this hour. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.